The meeting to order at this time. I know what we'd like for everybody to do is to mute your microphones and only turn them on when we speak. Um, and always stay on camera during the meeting. That way we know there's a quorum. I'm one of these guys that like to sometimes close my camera, but I won't do it today. So, and then anytime you talk, we'll go ahead and announce your name when you're speaking, so that we can know who's talking and address, for the minute purposes and things like that. So, call the meeting to order. I don't know if that's an action item or not, but we're good, right? Okay, next is to do the roll call certification of a quorum and introduction. I'd like to call on Angelica to do the roll call.
Yes, sir. James Radloff,
Here.
Joseph Villa,
Here.
To mute.
Michael McDougall,
Let me try that again. Here.
Gary Ernest,
Here.
Brian Ebersold, I think he's out, John Scott,
Here.
and presiding officer Shane Deckerty.
Here. It's
You have
good
a
to meet
quorum,
you. Good to meet you, Mr. Scott. Thanks for participating.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet everyone here.
Bet.
Okay, I'm going to call on for the agenda item C, the virtual meeting train. I'm going to call on Ms. Winston and the attorneys for the advisory boards on the virtual meeting training, which is basically meeting protocol and best practices, public comments, and public participation. So.
Thank you, Presiding Officer Doherty. Again, welcome to everyone here. And I think by now we probably have had more virtual meetings than we can count on fingers, toes, and any other objects that we can find. But I do want to just make us aware of, as Shane said at the top of the hour, that if you're not speaking, please mute your mic. If you would like to speak, unmute your mic. There is a hand raise feature which may be disabled because it's hard to follow that in this meeting. So just raise your hand. We'll keep an eye on that and we'll let the presiding officer know if he doesn't see it that, Mr. Simon has his hand up or so forth and so on. So that is one protocol. We also, whatever votes that we're going to take, we're going to do it by roll call. So Angelica will take the roll, we'll have a vote, and we'll record it that way. It's just simpler and it cuts out any confusion. So those are a couple of our best practices to have the great meeting. Another best practice, we have something that we call etiquette. Etiquette is just being respectful of those in the meeting and those who are watching the meeting. I see today that everyone is still and they're in an office setting, and I can now use an outside reference instead of an inside reference. I believe in the latest Johnny Depp Amber Heard hearings, one of the folks who was testifying was vaping and riding in the car at the same time. And so the judge was just flummoxed by what in the world. So we've had a little taste of that here and there, and we thank you all for being attentive and not dual tasking, multitasking to that level. For public comments, we generally, when we are in person, take those comments in person. However, since we are virtual, and this happened during the last session that we are allowed to remain virtual as needed, that we will take public comments when we post for this agenda. We notify the public when they can make public comments. They can send them in written form, or they can appear in one of these nice little blocks that we're in today, and they can speak before the meeting. Public participation. Public participation, we don't have folks that are sitting in the room. We're virtual. But as always, we post this meeting live and it's recorded and it remains on YouTube. One thing to say about YouTube, none of us wants to be the next YouTube sensation. So sometimes we get a little comfortable in these. We don't want to turn ourselves into a cat like the attorney did in another part of Texas. We don't want to just get so comfortable that someone says, "What are they doing back there?" We don't want to be that type of YouTube sensation. But with this group, I know we won't have that problem. Those just a couple of little tidbits, and I don't even think I need to say it for this group, but they make me. So, welcome back. Great to see you all. And presiding officer, let's continue with the agenda.
We're on agenda item number D, approval of minutes. Our last meeting was on November 1st of 2018. I don't know if any committee members have any questions regarding the minutes. I'm sure everybody got their packet before our meeting today. If does anybody have any comments at this time? Okay, if there
Mr.
are,
Chairman, this is Mike McDougal. I'll move approval of the minutes.
okay. Can we get a second?
It's Sidney Villa. I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been seconded. All approved, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Presiding officer?
Yeah, can we do
Yeah,
a roll
we're
call?
going to take that by a quick roll call so we can capture everything.
Okay,
Thank you, Mary. James Radloff,
I approve.
Gary Ernest,
Yes.
John Scott,
I approve.
Michael McDougal,
Aye.
Joseph Villa.
I approve. And you can call me Sidney. Joseph is my first name, but
Okay.
everybody calls me Sidney.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Villa. And presiding officer Shane Doherty.
I approve.
Motion passes.
Okay, we're on to item E, which is public comment. It's my understanding we've had no public comment. It was posted, you said, what the time of the agenda.
Mhm.
And at this point, there are no public comments. So I guess we can move on to agenda item. Now, I don't, do you want me to, any person who's wishing to address the board must submit an email by the following. The public comment instructions found on the last page of the agenda are located at www.tdlr.texas.gov. Emails must be sent to the board liaison at theboard.comments@tdlr.texas.gov by 12 p.m. Tuesday, May 3rd, 2002. The TDLR offices will not be open for public comment. So basically, I wanted to, I guess, make that known in case there are people out there watching for any future meeting. I'm assuming we'll probably continue in this forum, the WebEx forum. And if people have comments down the road, that's how that protocol will work. So at this point, I guess, anybody have any comments? All right, then we'll move on to the open government training. I see Mr. Gladney's here, Assistant General Counsel. Good to see you. And you'll be assisting us in this open meetings record training.
Yes, I will. For the record, my name is Mark Gladney. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for this program. And it is good to see all of you. I believe the last time that we got together, we were all in person. So this is quite a different atmosphere that we're in now. So I am going to share my screen for your open government training. We do this generally annually for each advisory board or committee. But since we haven't had a meeting in over 3 years, obviously we kind of went beyond that. But today we're going to start with the your open government training, and if I can get this thing to work right for me, these are the 3 acts that we're going to briefly go over. It's not going to be anything that's exhaustive. Many of you have probably been on boards and committees before, and certainly the veteran members of this committee, should be familiar with these particular acts, and we will be operating under them at all times for this particular committee. So those 3 acts are the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, and the Public Information Act. Now, starting with the Open Meetings Act, the purpose of the act is just simply to ensure that the activities of this board are open and transparent. The act requires that the meetings be open to the public, and they are, and to be preceded by public notice of the time, place, and subject matter of the meeting, which we do in the form of an agenda. The provisions of the rule are mandatory; they must be followed, and they are construed by courts as being in favor of open government. You're going to hear the word transparency quite a bit through this presentation. All 3 of these acts deal with allowing the general public to know exactly what governmental bodies are doing, how they're deliberating, and what decisions they come to. So one of the key concepts for the Open Meetings Act is that you have to have quorum. And a quorum is a majority of members of the advisory committee as fixed by rule or statute. In this case, we have 7. And today, I believe we have 5 members, so we do have quorum. And you need quorum of the governmental body in order to take an official action. If less than a quorum meets, the committee may have discussion, but can't take any official action. So, deliberation. What's deliberation? Simply discussion amongst yourselves and exchange among the quorum of the governmental body and between a quorum of the body and another person concerning an issue within the jurisdiction of the governmental body. So, issues that relate to the public, to the property tax professionals world, those are issues within your jurisdiction. If we started talking about boxing, well, that's something that's outside of your jurisdiction and wouldn't be subject to the Open Meetings Act. So, when does a meeting occur? A meeting occurs anytime that a quorum of governmental body engages in discussion regarding public business or policy over which the governmental body has jurisdiction, or any time that the body takes official action. So we talked about notice briefly. The Open Meetings Act requires advance notice of date, time, place, and subject matter of each meeting, and we do that in the form of agenda. All of our discussions will be within the 4 corners of that agenda. The notice has to be filed with the Secretary of State at least 7 days prior to the meeting and must be posted online, both here and with the Secretary of State. A committee or board may not engage in any discussions that are not included in the agenda. So once again, any discussions that we have today at this meeting are within the 4 corners of the agenda. If you start to stray a little bit, I'll certainly try to nudge you back onto the highway, or Mary will. So just keep your discussions on the agenda items, and we'll be perfectly fine. So, as far as the Open Meetings Act, when does it apply? What if you happen to be at a convention or a workshop, and can you ever violate the Open Meetings Act if you have a quorum of individuals and you meet in such an informal setting? And you generally, you're free to engage in conversation that's incidental to the event that you're at. So if it's some kind of property tax professionals convention, talking about various issues, you're free to discuss, those particular items that are brought up there. However, any discussion will be subject to the Open Meetings Act if a quorum of members is involved and the members start engaging in discussion or make decisions about board or committee business or take formal action. So just be aware that if you happen to be at a workshop and an issue comes up that's likely to come before the committee, you would want to refrain from having discussions where there's a quorum of members present at that workshop. So just kind of be careful about it. Be mindful. Okay, points to remember. Always be aware of any situation occurring outside of a meeting in which a quorum of members is present or engaged in discussion. Don't engage in any substantive conversations related to committee business where quorum is involved and you're outside of a regularly scheduled meeting. And then always be aware of the walking quorum. Now, what's a walking quorum? A walking quorum occurs when there's fewer than a quorum of meetings that talk about official business and then take what they talked about and communicate that to other members. So basically, this is a group of 7. If you happen to be at some kind of event and 2 of you are having a conversation about committee business, and then one of you goes and talks to a 3rd, and then that person goes and talks to a 4th. Well, at that particular point, you've got 4 members that have been discussing committee business outside of a regularly scheduled meeting, and it's a quorum. And that is something that you can't do. So walking quorums are a big no-no. Must stay away from them. And where can they occur? How can they occur? during conference calls amongst yourselves, video conferences, simple hallway discussions, emails, text messages. One of the big things today is social media. Some of you might have Facebook accounts. You might have Twitter accounts, and they may be followed by other members of the committee. And then you might be on your Facebook account making a comment about some type of committee business, and then there may be 3 other members or more that actually see this. That's considered a walking quorum. So be very careful how you use your social media, how you use your emails, how you use text messages, so you can avoid this very thing. So best practices to avoid a walking quorum: members should not meet in small groups and discuss committee business. They shouldn't send text messages or emails to a quorum of members regarding official business, even if you individually address it to each member. Just don't do that. Again, we talked about social media. Be careful about your social media posts where there's a possibility that a quorum of members could be in your downstream. And do not ask a quorum of members, even on an individual basis, for feedback or comments on committee business outside of the public meeting. This is polling, and it's also prohibited. So, just in closing, for this particular part, board committee is limited to discussing specific items on the agenda. Remember, the agenda is your roadmap. Stay within the 4 corners of the agenda. During the public comment portion of the meeting, members of the public are given an opportunity to speak, and the presiding officer can set limits. It's usually 3 minutes. A member of the public or board member may raise a subject that's not been included on the agenda, but what happens is that the discussion of the subject must be limited to placing the subject on the agenda for a future meeting. Again, not to beat a dead horse, just limit discussions to the agenda. Avoid allowing discussions on agendas items to sort of wander off to issues that haven't been noticed on the agenda. Do not respond or discuss issues that are raised during public comment, which are not on the agenda. Public comment is simply for the public to have an opportunity to raise a concern or an issue to the committee. And again, if it's something of great interest to one or more of you, then you can always ask to have it placed on a future agenda item in a future meeting. And specifically identify items for future agendas and communicate those to staff if you have it. Okay, there we go. Okay, of course, there are penalties that are associated with open meeting violations. There's civil remedies. Any interested person can petition the courts to stop actions that have been taken by the committee in violation of the Open Meetings Act. The act states that the action taken in violation of the act is voidable. And of course, there are criminal penalties. Members who knowingly participate in a walking quorum or knowingly participate in a meeting close to the public are subject to misdemeanor criminal penalties, and they can be from a fine of $100 to $500, and or confinement in county jail up to 6 months. So, it's not likely that something like this is going to happen, but we have had instances in the past where there have been criminal complaints filed against members of governmental bodies that have violated the Open Meetings Act. So it's not impossible for it to happen. So just be very careful. Okay. And these are the resources, extra information if you happen to be really interested in the Open Meetings Act. The Texas Attorney General has a great video that you can watch, and at the end of the video, you get a certificate. It's about a 40-minute video, so I strongly urge you, especially new members, you're required to take that video, within, I believe, 90 days of being appointed to a governmental body. So go and take a look at that video. AG also has a great handbook. You can download that from their site. It's very good. And then, of course, if you have any other questions, you can contact the General Counsel's office at the number below, and we'd be more than happy to help you. Okay. Now, moving on to the Administrative Procedures Act. Again, just like the Open Meetings Act, the purpose of the Administrative Procedures Act is to establish minimum standards of uniform practice and procedure for state agencies, and to provide public participation, and there's that word again, transparency, during the rulemaking process. What is a rule? A rule is just a statement of general applicability that implements, interprets, or prescribes law, or describes a practice or procedure of a state agency. A rule just basically interprets a law. These are the things a rule excludes a statement regarding the internal management or organization of an agency. And a rule can also include a new rule, an amendment to an existing rule, or repeal of an existing rule. And where do we get ideas for rulemaking? Well, through legislative changes. We'll be talking about one today, SB 916. We get ideas for rulemakings from you. We get them from staff. And then every 4 years, we're required to do a rule review to make sure that our rules in our rule chapter are still relevant for regulation of a particular occupation. And we'll be talking about that again today as well. And then a party can file a petition for rulemaking, and we can get ideas from that. And we can either instigate a rulemaking or not instigate one, or have one at a later date. And here, an interested person submitting a petition for rulemaking can be a Texas resident, Texas business entity, a Texas governmental subdivision, or a public or private organization that's not a state agency but is in Texas. Now, here's the process for rulemaking. Obviously, it starts with an idea, and then staff starts drafting. Staff has internal review and analysis that we go through, which may also involve a work group with some of you as members, and we will be appointing work group members today later on in the agenda. Once we get a rule draft completed, it goes to the governor's office for review, and then comes back, and we have a first advisory board meeting to get a recommendation to publish in the Texas Register. Once we get that from you, we file it in the Texas Register. There's a 30-day comment period in which members of the public get an opportunity to say what they like about the rule, what they don't like about the rule change, and even offer their own rule language. We review the public comments, and then we have another advisory committee meeting in which the advisory committee will discuss the public comments. They'll discuss the rule again, and we ask for a recommendation to the commission for adoption of the rule package. Then we take the rule package to the commission. The commission goes thumbs up or thumbs down on it. They may want to make some changes, but more often than not, they adopt the rule package. The rule package gets published again in the Texas Register, and it becomes effective on a certain date thereafter. Okay. Now, for the rule review process, and we have an agenda item on a rule review that we did for this program a few years ago. As I said before, it's on a 4-year schedule. We file a notice of intent to review the rules to determine whether or not the rules are still relevant and whether or not they're still necessary. We file that in the Texas Register. There's another 30-day comment period. Comes back to GC, will review the comments and make a recommendation to the commission. The commission will review the rule filing and comments, and they may or may not readopt the rule. The advisory board after that is presented with any comments and may recommend changes for future rulemaking. And here's some more information. If you're interested in the APA, here are the links that you can take a look at for information. And again, if you have any questions, our number is below, and feel free to call the General Counsel's office, and we'd be happy to help you with any question you may have. And the last one is the Public Information Act. It's also known as the Open Records Act. And the Open Records Act is intended to allow the public access to information about the affairs of government and the official acts of public officials and employees. The Act makes all documents, records, and information relating to official business open to the public. Now, there are a number of exceptions. We won't get into them today because there's a lot of exceptions, but there are exceptions to what it is that we are required by law to apply to give to a requester under the PIA. Public information includes any electronic communication created or transmitted, received, or maintained on any device if it's in connection with official agency business. So kind of be careful about using your own personal devices for advisory board business. Try not to do that because your cell phones or your computers might be subject to disclosure under the Act. So try not to use your own personal devices if you can. Okay, the process for a PIA request. Once we receive a request, if you happen to receive one, you need to forward it to the General Counsel's Open Records team. We have a group of individuals who specialize in dealing with these types of requests. And if the Open Records team contacts you after you reported to them that you've gotten something that looks like an Open Records request, respond to them quickly because we have a short time period in which to respond to a PIA request. In fact, TDLR must respond to the request as soon as possible, but not later than 10 business days after receiving the request. We can't ask anybody why they want the records, but if they send us a request that's a little bit vague, we can certainly ask for clarification. So the general rule related to the PIA is that there's a presumption of openness. There's a presumption of giving the information to the requester. Now, certain information that we do give is there's some of that's redacted, such as date of birth, email addresses, driver's license numbers, and HIPAA information, and other things. Okay, so again, if you have any questions about the PIA, here are some links that you can go to get some more information on PIA. Again, the AG has a great video discussing this. You can certainly very good as well. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to call the General Counsel's office at the number below. And that concludes the presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Thanks very much, Mark. Appreciate that. Anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. Let's go to agenda item G, which is staff reports. So brief staff and discussions. The first one up is Licensing Division. They'll talk about some updates, statistics, and projects. And I'd like to call on Yvonne Lopez at this time for that report.
Good morning, members, and may the 4th be with you all. So just to get started, I'll give you a personnel update. Longtime licensing manager Tarsha Red separated from TDLR on December 12th after 12 years. She accepted a position with the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. The property tax professional licensing responsibilities were transferred to me. And I've been with TDLR since August of 2008. I have experience with enforcement, regulatory program management, which used to be called compliance, and was promoted to licensing manager in September of 2019. So very nice to be here with y'all today. On the licensing statistics, this is just a snapshot of what the population is or was between September 1st and March 31st. You'll see the total population for that time frame is 3631 overall for the appraisers, collectors, and assessor collectors. And that's just a slight increase from the same time period in fiscal year 2021. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. Moving on, I've also included the total email contacts between September 1st and March 31st. During this time period in fiscal year 2021, there were over 15,000 email contacts. And for this fiscal year, for that same time period, there are almost 14,400 contacts. That is a slight decrease, but I do believe that it is because we have just taken over the program in January, so that does not include PTP contacts for September through December of 2021. For projects, just a little bit about how we responded to COVID between September of 2020 through December of 2020. Our average backlogs were about 77 days, and our average backlog of applications in queue was over 1,400. We came up with a strategic workforce allocation team where we just allocated staff from other areas of the agency to help licensing staff process simple applications so that the more experienced staff could focus on the more complex applications. And then you'll notice between January 2021 through August of 2021, the number of days of backlog dropped to 66 with an average backlog of 832 pending applications in queue. For fiscal year 2022, we're just kind of continuing to monitor our flow of work, and we're providing updates to management just to stay ahead of any unforeseen increases in our workflows. The option to reactivate SWAT remains open. We're not currently using them. And that's just because the work is at a manageable, it's just more manageable right now. Our current average backlogs at the time of reporting was at 23 days. Right now, there are a few applications where they just take us out to about 30 days. Our average backlog had been at 252 applications in queue. This team does have one person in office every day on a rotating basis. Since our return to work office, we do occasionally have two people in office at a time. Like I said, our in-office work continues to be monitored with adjustments of in-office staffing as necessary. Just the applications received each quarter between September through March for fiscal 21, there were over 13,000 total applications that we had received. We're still receiving applications. And for fiscal year 2022, we have received over 16,000 applications so far. Concerning email contacts, it's really important for the PTP industry to use the web form so that we can help get a response to any of our customers in a timely manner. I know that previously some of our industry base would contact a single individual occasionally, and we just want to make sure that if that individual is out, that someone's going to get a response to their inquiry. So just using that web form at www.tdlr.texas.gov/help, and you can access that same URL using our website on the Contact Us page. This will ensure that everyone gets a response. Any questions?
I would like just to point out to the industry out there that you all, I believe TDLR has over 1 million registrants within all their programs. And I don't know, was it up to, how many programs do you all have now? 45, I think, is it?
We have 39, but our populations are growing,
Right. And I just like to
especially with the influx of people that are moving to Texas. We're definitely seeing an increase in applications that are coming in. So we see a lot more reciprocity applications for some of the other industries than we would normally see.
right. I just want the public and the registrants to know that. So those that are listening or will listen if they ever take back in to look at the video that was recorded. But you know, we're one of many, and you obviously have a very big pool of registrants, and we appreciate your responses and following up as you do. I know there's a lot of moving parts within TDLR. So
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank
Ye-
you.
Yes, ma'am. This is Gary Ernest, and your initial statistic about the license that were issued, do you track or do you have a statistics on the license that were issued and then the license that were not completed?
I don't have that right at my hand, but I believe that I can get some of that information. So I'll see if we can access like the number of applications submitted for this license and versus the number of applications that are outstanding because of, maybe somebody didn't answer the criminal history question, or on renewal, we didn't get, I think that's the biggest reason for outstanding requests for information is because people don't answer the criminal history question or they're not associated with a CAD. And the CEs as well. The CEs are a big one where the CEs are not being done. The appropriate number of hours aren't being done in the required topics.
And I guess what I was trying to make a reference or tie to was we hear a lot of discussion about, the testing procedures and a lot of fails and a lot of those applicants that aren't successful. So, trying to tie some of that together, and I understand that there may be several variables involved, but if there is any way that we can look at that, and you don't have to do a lot of extra work on this. I'm just trying to
Our
tie
E&E
those.
division. I'm
I'm
sorry
sorry.
to interrupt.
And so if that's the case, if we can link those that were issued, because these issues are actually new license, correct? Whenever you say issues in the statistics, is this new or is this,
These include new and renewal.
okay,
So it's a total population.
okay. Well, either way, don't go through a lot of trouble. If you have it, great. If not, then we'll address the testing in another segment. So, thank you.
Okay. I believe our education and examination division will be able to go over the pass fail rate for the registrants.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
all right, any
Any
more
other
questions
questions?
for Yvonne? Ms. Lopez? Okay, thanks very much. I guess we're going to move on to the customer service. I'm going to call on Dawn Robinson for the customer service statistic reports.
Good morning. My name is Dawn Robinson. I'm one of the managers here in customer service. The responsibility or the job for customer service is to respond to licensee inquiries via email and phone calls. And just taking a look at fiscal year 2021, our emails were at 534, and fiscal year versus fiscal year 2022, current to date, is 262. The calls for fiscal year 2021 was 1,834 calls. And our current call volume quantity today, fiscal year 2022, year to date, is 951. If you have any other questions, I'm gladly here to assist.
Any questions? Okay, thanks very much.
I had a question on your, this is Sydney Villa. I had a question. When people call in, is it an automated response that they're getting, or are they speaking to a live person?
They're speaking to a live person. We are currently specialized, so we have a certain set of CSRs representatives who specialize in particular license types. So they are speaking to a live agent. Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Ms. Robinson, thanks very much. You're going to go to the enforcement division. I'd like to call on Victoria Mezes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Victoria Mesa. I'm a prosecutor for the Enforcement Division, and I'll present enforcement's report to you today. Thank you all for being here. I'll be covering some personnel updates and key statistics for the Property Tax Professionals Program. First, regarding our personnel updates for you, we had a lot of new hires and promotions and several retirements over the past 4 years since you all last met. As you can see, there's about 2.5 pages of them. So I won't read them all to you if that's all right. I see you have them there in your packet. But we just want to congratulate everyone on their retirements and promotions. And I'd just like to maybe go ahead and move on to statistics if that's okay with everyone. So overall, PTP cases are it's a small percentage of the department's cases, but these are some of our more complicated cases, and they do sometimes take longer to resolve than some of our other program cases. That's because TDLR puts a lot of emphasis on trying to respond to the complainant's needs and work out amicable solutions whenever possible. These cases do, however, lend themselves well to resolution, but that does result in cases being open a little bit longer. Generally, these program cases come from one of two sources. So we're either getting them from our criminal history checks, which is a requirement of the license, or from consumer complaints. And they're generally heavily consumer complaint cases. The consumer complaint process, just for anybody who's not familiar with it, is relatively straightforward. Complaints come into our intake division, who evaluate them to determine if there's an issue within TDLR's authority and if it merits opening a case. And then if they do open the case, cases are then assigned to an investigator, and that investigator gathers all the evidence that they can, and then it will be forwarded to an enforcement division, and a prosecutor is assigned to the case to make a determination. Generally, cases have one of three outcomes. They can be closed for lack of evidence, or a prosecutor may issue a warning, and those warnings just depend on a variety of circumstances. Or the prosecutor may issue what's known as a notice of alleged violation, and this is what we would consider a disciplinary action. Fortunately, in this program, there were no cases resulting in any disciplinary actions for the first 8 months of fiscal year 2022. The department was able to informally resolve all of the complaint cases. So this can mean a number of things, such as either the case was closed because there was just insufficient evidence, or it might mean that the licensee came into compliance by renewing an expired license or fixing an issue with the complainant or an agency. So we may just close that case with a warning. Compliance is always our goal of enforcement, so we'll continue to seek resolutions that best meet the concerns and goals of the parties involved and are in the interest of justice as well. If you look at the top of page 3, sorry, I know I'm making Angelica run back and forth, you can see a breakdown of the number of complaints that we actually received. The department got 50 complaints through March of fiscal year 2022 and only opened cases on 18 of those complaints. And half of those have already been closed. So that's a pretty good indicator of the results of cases in this program. We've also included for your reference the case numbers for fiscal year 2021, but they fall well in line with what we're seeing for 2022. Just in conclusion, this program doesn't have major compliance issues with its licensees, which is great news from our perspective in enforcement. The cases we do open are either closed or resolved without the need for any disciplinary action. And so that's basically our report. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions at all, I'm happy to answer them.
This is Shane. Does anybody have any questions? Thanks for that very comprehensive report. So at this point, let's move on to Education Examination Division. I'd like to call on Michael Strawn.
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Michael Strawn. I'm manager for our Education Examination Division, here to give you our staff report for today. As you can see on your screen, we have statistics for our examinations for fiscal year 2022. For this quarter, we have a 49% pass rate, and for the year, a 44% pass rate with the number of examinations and the pass rate being very consistent from what we've seen in past years as well. Moving down, if you would, to our CE stuff, and this is the breakout by our examinations by license type. You'll see the specific breakouts for the pass fail. I know there were some questions earlier during the licensing discussion, so I'm happy to get into that as well for anything you have here. But this will actually break out the individual license type exams for the pass rates and fail rates. And again, overall, they've remained consistent from what we've seen in past examinations for this program and across all of those boards. Our continuing education courses, as you move down, you will see that we do have a reduction in the number of CE courses that we have provided. I believe that is a change done into the way that they are no longer auto-renewing in our division as far as the CE courses. People are having to submit those requirements through an application. And so we've seen a little bit of a drop off during that time, whereas due to auto-renewal and keeping those numbers, I think it was kind of artificially inflated at that point in time. So what you see now is more of a true representation of the continuing education courses that are available at this point. Moving down into the next part. So again, kind of touched on this already, the CE providers update. We wanted to make sure to remind everybody that providers can offer core courses as continuing education. There are a few requirements for that. One is that the CE provider must submit the PTP continuing education course approval application that's located on our website to E&E using the web form. You heard about our web form being talked about earlier. That's something that's gone across our entire multiple divisions, where basically instead of just sending an email directly to a staff member, there is a form on our website that allows you to identify yourself, your license numbers, questions, dictate which industry you are contacting us from, upload documents to that. And this has really helped our division, especially because it allows us to see what we're commonly receiving work on, or the types of questions and the nature of those questions, so that we can work smarter and we can address issues or questions or see trends where they might be. So that's why we're having everybody submit through these types of things rather than just email, because it allows us to have better oversight, auditing, and review capability of the work that's coming into our division. And then the last part of my update is regarding examinations. Here in an education examination, it is a large focus of ours to deliver a great customer experience, be accountable for our exams. And we know for a very long time now, scheduling has been a very difficult process for the PTP exams. The length of the examination often means that available times are not readily available up front because these exams block off, an entire day, and those chairs sometimes are not available. So one of the things that we have introduced this year is what we call an e-examination. So effective June 1st of this year, so June 1st, 2022, candidates for this program will be able to participate in our e-exam process. And that includes our tax appraiser class 4 RPA exam, the tax assessor collector class 4 RTA, the Texas collector class 3 RTC, and the Texas appraiser class 3 exams. All of those will be available in our e-exam format. And I'll go into a little bit of definition as to what that exactly is here in a second, but we think that this is going to be something that's going to greatly serve this industry because these e-exams are going to be available. There is no physical chair that's being locked down or taken up by other students. It allows individuals to schedule a time where they can actually sit down with a proctor for an exam through a virtual medium just like this. The same examination, the same identification requirements, same materials, everything is still required of that exam. It's just a virtual experience. You still have to show ID. You have to ensure that no one is in the room with you. There's a bunch of testing requirements that ensure that that testing experience is exactly what you would see in a testing site in person, carried over into the safety, convenience, of your own home. And so we will be sending out information about that tomorrow, actually, out through our government delivery system with a link to a video to kind of see what that process looks like, to demo it and everything else. And then effective June 1st, candidates will be able to start scheduling those e-exams. And again, we really feel that this is something that's going to greatly benefit this industry, more so than others that we've released in the past because of the length of y'all's exams. It is one of our most complicated and lengthy exams. And this is, I believe, going to be a great service to you all. We've seen great feedback, great response to these e-exams in other industries. And I apologize it's taken so long to get it to you all, but some of y'all's exams being a little bit more complicated or having an open book certainly presented some challenges on how we were going to approach this. Also, moving into our PTP exam review committee, many of y'all know that we routinely do upkeep, maintenance, and and take a deep dive into our examinations at all times. We get questions on pass rates or different things of the content outline, and the exam review committee consists of a group of subject matter experts from the industry. Those individuals are brought back routinely to look at items on the exam that are overperforming, underperforming, taking new looks at any changes that were required due to law, statute changes, rule changes, and making sure that all of our testing items are defensible, that they're correct, that they're asking the correct questions, and they're meeting the content outline that has been designed by our subject matter experts. So that took place November 30th through December 2nd of last year. And again, those items and everything are carried over to our exams to make sure that we're providing the best testing experience and the most up-to-date exam possible. And lastly, just anytime you are sitting for an exam, we just ask that individuals please view the latest copy of the Candidate Information Bulletin. They are located on our website. What we call the CIB, the Candidate Information Bulletin, will list everything from the cost of the exam to the content outline, how to request ADA accommodations. It is everything that you should need to know about the examination process, including how to schedule. So we always ask people, we get a lot of questions regarding that. And we always ask people to please make sure that you're reading the Candidate Information Bulletin because it should be able to answer any of those questions and help better prepare people for the content that will be on the examination that they're sitting for. With that being said, that concludes my report, and I'm open to any questions that you all may have.
Yes, sir. This is Gary Ernest. And how will you designate the proctors?
So our examination vendor themselves are required to, designate the proctors. At times, they, depending on what it is, especially if it's a practical exam, which y'all do not have, they're licensed in that industry. For this one, they will select, they have a select set of requirements for who meets those requirements for sitting for a proctoring and examination. I don't know offhand of what those requirements are for PTP or PTC, but I will be happy to get those to y'all and provide them of exactly what those raters and proctors qualifications are for this industry, if you'd like.
Okay. No, that's not necessary for me.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to kind of back up a little bit for clarifications purposes, transparency. I actually am on the Property Tax Professional Examination Review Committee, and this is really for the industry registrants out there, is that we do meet typically after each legislative session, as Strawn indicated, to look at those questions that are performing well, not performing well, making sure that the exam reflects the current laws. In fact, PSI and TDLR work in conjunction with this. PSI is the testing organization that assists with this, but it goes to the extent if there's a question we had the incorrect answer, they'll go back and look to see if that question anybody actually got it right and should have was tested wrong, and they will make the change and take appropriate action. But we are very proactive, TDLR and PSI, of making sure the questions are reflected in basically 3 documents. And I think it's important the registrants know this. Why the Property Tax Education Coalition is responsible for maintaining our core curriculum, with the Property Tax Assistance Division approving the core curriculum. One of the things within the PTP Examination Review Committee is every question associated with the exam is tied to actually a public circulated document. It's either the Texas Property Tax Code, the USPAP, or basically the Property Assessment Valuation Green Book from IAAO. So it's important that registrants know that. We always encourage registrants, while they have the core material from Property Tax Education Coalition, they should also use the IAAO Green Book, Property Assessment Valuation Book, as a tool to help them understand the concepts. And I can say this, not only within the Examination Review Committee, but within PTEC, there are concerns about the pass-fail rate. And, you know, obviously it's a minimal level competency exam. One of the things we do is kind of see lately the trends with the Gen Xers is they may be more into memorization and not understanding the concepts. And within a given core course, you can see maybe there could be 50 questions on the exam, but there could be potentially 80 questions that could show up in the examination, level 3 in RPA or the RTA, RTC. And it's important that teachers and the students understand the breadth of the material within each course.
Presiding Officer Doherty,
Uh-huh.
thank you for that in-depth discussion on the testing. I just will have to pull us back to the agenda.
Okay.
But if this is of interest, and I think it is for this group, we can put a more in-depth item to go into it. I think you provided some excellent information,
Right.
but I just don't want us to get too off topic. But we can also make that an agenda item for a meeting sooner than the one we, came to this time. But thank you so much.
I appreciate that. I just want the registrants to know that we're out there doing due diligence on all ends. So
Thank you.
okay.
If possible, this is Gary Ernst. Can I ask a specific question about the agenda item, which is related to the pass-fail rate? Do we have correspondence back and forth with PCP that indicate that 44% is within an acceptable range for this type profession on the other range of professionals that they test throughout Texas and I guess United States?
So to answer your question, as far as how this examination performs compared to other examinations, we do not have or do we compare one examination type to another? I mean, we
Okay.
have examinations that have lower pass rates. We have examinations that have higher pass rates. Sometimes the materials, we've seen a lot of requirements that may impact the success of a candidate that we've seen in other industries, such as the length of time they take to take an examination after they're eligible. This is an industry that we often see individuals needing extensions to actually sit for their examinations. In other industries, we have seen that when people test sooner, or we've had early testing for those individuals when they're still in school, their success rate is much higher. For individuals that are requiring extensions or not sitting for their examination right away, sometimes they are a little bit lower. However, we often come back to the fact that the pass rate is the pass rate for a specific industry. Not to be obtuse, but these questions are often, as you heard Mr. Doshert say earlier, they're a breadth of, they're speaking to all of these individual components that are required by law or open source books or requirements that are out there. And that's why we request that these candidates are reading the candidate information bulletin to be aware of what sources are being cited and used in these things or these examinations so they can be better prepared for these exams. Y'all's exam is something that is, it's a handful. It's a very long examination. There's a lot of material to that. And the expertise and knowledge that goes into it, as y'all are well aware, is sometimes a bit challenging. So, but we comparing that to one industry to another to say if it's in line with any others is sometimes difficult to say because you may have other industries that may only have 40, 50 examination items on them versus.
Yes, sir. And thank you for that. Yeah, I agree in a good firm approach because we require an educated skill set, a strong skill set in this industry. And so I applaud the efforts across the board and thank you.
Yes, sir.
And this is Shane. One stat I would like to possibly see the next time we get together is with regard to this, is those registrants that were unable to timely pass the level 3 and the RPA, in which they are no longer licensed registrants because of that. It'd be nice to know, because I know the exams are total exams taken. Within the program, you can take the exam as many times within the time frame. So, but it would be nice to maybe have a stat on those registrants that were unable to successfully pass the exam in a timely fashion and are no longer currently registered with TDLR due to that issue.
I'll look and see if that's a report that we can potentially pull for you all and see if there's some correlation in there.
Okay, we're on to any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question. This is Tim Radloff or James Radloff. One thing that I'm wondering is that, you know, I know for a registrant to take a level exam, they have to complete the required core courses in order to take that exam. But I'm wondering if maybe some of these registrants that are taking the exam, do we know how long they've actually been in the business or in our profession before they set for their first exam? I know, you know, I'm wondering if maybe some experience issues may be coming into play when it comes to our pass fail rate. I mean, you know, someone who, you know, their employer, you know, gets them through the courses relatively quick, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but maybe their experience. But I guess my question is, do we know how long they've actually been in the business when they set for their first exam?
Michael Strawn, Education Examination, and Mr. Radloff, that's a good question, and I apologize, part of it broke up for me. But I believe I got the core of your question, is that there, you know, is it their pass rate, and is there a correlation that we can tie into their pass rate versus their length of time in the industry, their experience in the industry? Is that correct?
Right.
Um,
Right. Yes, sir.
I do not know if we would be tracking that on their application or their other information. I'd really have to dive into that in conjunction with our licensing department to understand what information is being gathered, or if that's a metric that can be pulled from our system. I do not know offhand, but certainly
Okay.
something I can look into for you.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks very much, Michael. I think I'm really excited about that new program. That's going to be great opportunity for people to sit for the exam. I think we'll probably have something set up in our office to do that. But also, I think it'll bring down the anxiety levels with people who aren't always familiar with where they have to go and those type of things. I think it's going to help the industry, definitely with regard to getting tests scheduled more timely. I know we've had some issues here in the Metroplex with regard to that due to the volume of other programs that are testing here. And just a little background, I know, Mary, I hope I'm not getting offline, but you know, when we first came into existence in 09 under TDLR, that was a big issue about the RPA exam going to 6 hours. I know the educational director at that time had concerns with that, for the very idea that you really are taking a seat for the full day. But due to the breadth of our curriculum, we needed to have that 150-hour exam take over 6 hours. So it was always been a concern with TDLR, but it's something that we just couldn't seem to avoid due to the broad breadth of our curriculum. So, but we do appreciate all your efforts that you're doing, and I think that's a great the online piece is going to be great for our industry. So, okay, with that said, I'd like to go to the Regulatory Program Management Division and call on Stuart Strand.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members. I'm Stuart Stannard. I am with TDLR in the Business and Consumer Safety Section Manager within the Regulatory Program Management Division. That's almost a mouthful, is it not? We do have several items to cover this morning. One I felt was very important to start with are some of our personnel updates. One being, and I'm sure that you've all known that Brian Francis retired at the end of January this year, and Mike Ayers-Mendez was appointed the executive director and is currently the executive director. Charlotte Miller is the director now of Regulatory Program Management Division as of 2019. She was previously in our Enforcement Division, but she also served as the Business and Consumer Safety Section Manager, which is now my position that I assumed the role in February of 2020. Also, during the last year, Russ Tolley, that y'all have all grown to know over the years, he retired in April of 2021. He was the program specialist for this program and several others. He had over 30 years of service, and we do miss him. He was a wealth of knowledge for us. We do have several other program specialists that are assisting in this particular area now. And those individuals are Todd Forster, who's going to be the go-to person for property tax consultants, as well as this program, property tax professionals. We also have Latasha Poland as a program specialist that provides coverage for Todd as well. And Dina Winkfield is administrative assistant with the program. And you'll see over time that she does a lot of the notices that are associated to our methods and assistant program referrals that we receive here at the department. And that concludes our personnel updates. As far as statistics, the big piece of what our regulatory program management and PTP program consist of is a great deal of our lion's share of our work, I should say, is in the methods assistance program. That's been our referrals for county appraisal districts to us from the property tax assistance division in the comptroller's office. And we do a lion's share of work there. We do have, as you'll see down later, and I'll mention in some current projects, we definitely provide outreach when possible. We also have, provide a lot of assistance for licensing and other licensing requirements, technical questions for the program and whatnot. What you see here in front of us as far as statistics, in the 2019 map, that was referred to us in January of 2021 from the Property Tax Assistance Division. We had 22 referrals to us this particular year, and not getting too far out in the weeds, but I believe we all understand that these map reviews are done by the Property Tax Assistance Division on rotating years, half the counties, and then they split them from year to year. This particular one, like I said, we had 22 referrals to us. From that, we provide assistance in order to work with the counties that are referred to us to finish up. Normally, as you see here, this is a 2019. So as they start, the comptroller starts their review process for the MAP program. They start the review. They have a year to finish up. The county appraisal district does with the comptroller's office. If they have not completed or substantially implemented all the recommendations from their MAP, then it's referred to us, correct? And that's where we step in and try to assist in bringing some of this substantially implemented recommendations into play. As you can see, 6 counties for our 2021 calendar year for the 2019 MAP were not able to substantially implement all the recommendations at this time. 16 counties were, as you can see there in front of you. One thing is that we sent out letters also as who substantially implemented the MAP program after the referral to us, to the county appraisal districts as of March the 1st. And we also sent the ones, the 16 and the 6 that did not substantially implement, and giving them notice that within the period of time, they had not sent us submissions that would allow us to make a determination of substantially implementing those recommendations from the Property Tax Assistance Division. Those went out March the 1st, and they are reviewed. The report is compiled and then reviewed by our executive director, who then reviewed each letter, and then we forward them out to the appropriate district, and with the outcome. Our current projects, again, for the Methods and Assistance Program, we got our referral back in January, and we do each year from the comptroller's office. And this year we've got 25 counties again that were referred to us, and some of these MAP referrals to us were for recommendations of some counties only had 1 or 2. I've seen them up to 21 recommendations, right? So it's a range of the number. I'd say somewhere typically, what I can tell from the data that we have existing, 4 to 6 recommendations possibly per county. But that doesn't mean that a few of these in here only have one recommendation that they need to fill. So the first notices for the 2020 map in our calendar year of 2022 first went out as of March the 1st, and those notices were sent out to each of these counties that you see listed here in front of you. We did also notate that so that we can compile our reports, that we would like to have the submissions in from these counties that were in the referral by November the 15th of this year, because it helps us complete our findings also. Another one of our current projects, as you all are aware of, in the 87th session, we wrapped up our sunset review, which agencies go through. And I'd say we came through quite well, but we're also in the process of implementing some recommendations that they've had for us. And not to steal any thunder again from the executive office, because they will go through this at a greater extent, no doubt. But we are looking at to be more data driven in our program area and our division as an RPM. So we have started instituting or implementing data collection so that we can have better matrix on what our calls are on or our email inquiries, and so that we can better assist our consumers and our licensees for sure, and how this will play in roles as we work together as an agency in other divisions, whether it's enforcement, licensing, our rule reviews that we go through with our general counsel and everybody to make improvements and process improvements for these programs to be more effective. So those analytics are underway, that implementation piece, and we are collecting some data internally now that our specialists, as they interact with, like I said, consumers and licensees. Outreach, regulatory program development, regulatory program management, division prides ourselves and as program subject matter experts on providing outreach. Here again, this is a program that we offer any assistance to our licensees and any venue, any events that you may have in which we can participate. Our program specialist, Todd Forrester, as well as Latasha, are frequently answering questions on the phone and emails regarding specific program inquiries, and typically it revolves around licensing, sometimes educational requirements, and how that interacts with our statutory oversight and regulations that are currently enacted. Also, a lot of what we do throughout the year, because it's a big part of what we have here within this program, is the methods and assistance program, and providing input of what we might need from these county appraisal districts that have been referred to us, so that they can provide us a submission that shows that they're implementing this, the recommendations from that particular map that they've been referred to. Again, myself, Todd Forrester, Latasha, here at the agency, and always offering our assistance. A lot of what I would say comes in through our customer service division and comes to us, which is the most readily and easily a method to get to us. But there is a email address that we use, especially for the MAPS program. It's just an acronym, BCS TPECS@tdr.texas.gov, and that goes to a group of my staff, and not just focused on one. It goes to Todd, it goes to Latasha, it goes to Dina, myself, and a couple of others. But we are always willing to help, and would like to offer any assistance and outreach in any venue that conferences, association meetings, etc. We'll say this, we do still actively participate in meetings with the comptroller, and also have reached out to them, and we've been working through them to further our education a little bit more in depth of the MAP program and the inner workings of that. And they've been gracious to have us on, so that we can definitely be more effective in what we do here and liaisons between agencies and industry. So that concludes my presentation for the report for the RPM division. Is there any questions?
Stuart, this is Gary Ernest, and other than the appraisal district or the county being excluded from a grace period in the PBS if they do fail the maps, what are the other penalties involved, if any, let's say for the 6 counties that were failing to substantially implement the recommendations from TDLR?
Yes, I don't know if there's a penalty matrix that in which they are enforcement would have to speak a little bit more on that. As far as the tax code in chapter 5 and that section 5.02, it's just a notice to them right now. And again, I don't want to get too far off in the weeds and steal any thunder from the executive office, but there was a Senate Bill 916 also that is putting folks more on point that the reports or the map reports now are found on our website of showing where certain maps were not met, the recommendations were not met. To my knowledge right now, that's to the extent of that. Yeah. It's possibly that enforcement could speak a little bit more to that, but I do not believe that there's a direct or has been, and I don't want to be off point about that, but I don't know if there's been a direct penalty for that at this time.
Okay.
Monetary.
Any other comments? Okay, let's move on to the executive office report. I'd like to call on Mary Winston to do that.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Stuart. You stole a little bit, but not really. We're going to continue on, and actually, Mark Gladney is going to provide some bill implementation updates, specifically on Senate Bill 916. So we will give you updates there. I'm Mary Winston, an attorney for the advisory board, and I'll be bringing you the executive report. I want to begin by saying again, welcome to our new committee member, Mr. Scott, and welcome back to our existing board members. Many things have happened since we last met. And tax season is again upon us. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be the face for your profession and to address all the issues relating to the license. During the interim between last meeting and this one, a few extra things happened here at TDLR and frankly all over the world. But first, we want to talk about just briefly that TDLR did go through the Sunset Review. Stuart touched on some specific things that Sunset talked about that we are pivoting and making sure that we cover about being data driven. All divisions, this is something that we took to heart. We're working on it, and it's been an improvement. Sunset Review was a deep dive into all of TDLR processes. There were interviews with staff, stakeholders, and public hearings before the Sunset Committee. The good news is that the Sunset staff recommended and Sunset Committee approved that TDLR be continued for an additional 12 years. We were continued, but yes, we were also given directives on how to improve. We've taken those directives and we are currently implementing them. COVID-19. TDLR took immediate action upon the onset of COVID-19, pivoting from in-person working to remote working to hybrid working, which includes both working remote and standard office hours, with the awareness of the continued need for social distancing. Kudos to our IT department for working literally at warp speed to not halt the very important work that this agency does for all of its licensees and the additional citizens of Texas. During those changes, TDLR was under the leadership of Brian Francis as our executive director. At the end of this year, Brian retired, or the beginning of this year. Yeah, he did retire, and Mike Aris Mendez accepted the position as executive director of TDLR. Mike has been both a former chair of the Texas Commission of Licensing and Regulation, and he has served as deputy executive director for the agency. Rounding out our executive office, we have Ms. Christina Kaiser as Senior Deputy Executive Director, Mr. David Gonzalez as Deputy Executive Director and Mr. Hemant Macon as the new Chief of Staff. Currently, we're in the process of strategic planning. This is our long-range planning that's required of all state agencies to maximize efficiency and better accomplish the agency's core mission. We've conducted several sessions, both internally and externally, in person throughout the state and virtually. And we will provide an update on this process upon conclusion of the drafting of this plan. Next month, keep checking the website. We will have any information, all information there, and we will provide regular updates. As I said earlier, Mark Gladney, and as you can see from the agenda, next two items, he will provide, as Assistant General Counsel, updates on bill implementation. So I want to move on just to a quick snapshot for our communication outreach statistics. Thanks, Angelica. Well, almost. I'm going to just keep going though. This, there you go. Our statistics. This is just a snapshot again of online activity for the Property Tax Professionals webpage over the last 6 months. While this is not a scientifically verified study, these numbers do indicate for us how our website and specifically your webpage is being visited and if it's meeting the needs of its viewers. Over the past 6 months, and this wrapped at from November of last year to the end of April of this year, the Property Tax Professionals website had over 1,000 views, an average of 6 per day. 7%, 78% of those viewers access this from their desktop computer. This changes from profession to profession. Since your job requires that desktop, this is where you would access some of our programs, access more on mobile devices. 21% of the licensees or interested parties access from a smartphone, and we have 1% from a tablet. Top reasons for visiting the site: Property Tax Professionals Core Education, frequently asked questions, continuing education, laws and rules, and forms. So that just provides us information on who's going to visit the website or why they're going to visit the website. This concludes my presentation for Executive Office. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions? All right. Thanks very much for that report, Ms. Winston. Let's go to Agenda H, discussion update on the 2019 rule review of 16 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 94. I'd like to call on Mark Gladney at this time.
Thank you. For the record, Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel for the PTP program, and I'm providing you a short update of the 4-year rule review of Chapter 94 of the PTP rules that occurred in 2019 as required by law. And if you'll remember from the open government training portion of the agenda, I did mention that the agency is required to go through a 4-year review of administrative rule chapters to just determine whether or not those rules are absolutely necessary anymore. So TLR filed a notice of intent to review and consider for readoption, revision, repeal of Chapter 94. The notice was published in the August 24th, 2018 issue of the Texas Register, and public comment closed on September 24th of 2018. Upon review, the department determined that the rules are still essential in implementing the statutory provisions of the Occupations Code Chapter 1151 for property tax professionals. The rules, as I've said before, they provide details that are not always found in the program statute, but are necessary for the implementation and operation of the program. During the 30-day comment period, the department did receive some public comments. The comments received during this rule review will continue to be considered along with department staff, work group input, and any other public comments that we receive in a future rulemaking for Chapter 94 in accordance with the standard rulemaking process for the APA that I laid out earlier in the meeting. So if you want to see the readoption paperwork, it's on approximately page 66 of your briefing materials, but the chapter was readopted by the commission, and that's all I have on this update for the review.
Questions? Any questions? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda I, which is discussion and update of 2022 bill limitation of Senate Bill 916. I'd like to call on Mark Gladney at this time.
Okay, again, for the record, Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel for TDLR in this program. I'm here to present an update on the rule package implementing Senate Bill 916 that was passed in the last legislative session, which pertains to this program. The bill called for amendment to Chapter 94 of our rules to have the commission adopt a rule which requires the department to provide an electronic link on its website that connects a user to the findings from the comptroller's biennial review of the appraisal district during the time that the selected registered professional appraiser was serving as chief appraiser for that district, as well as each property value study used by the comptroller in each review. So this link allows users to easily obtain data to evaluate the performance of a chief appraiser for appraisal district during a specific period of time of his or her tenure. The rules were published in the Register on December 10th of last year. The comment period ended January 10th of this year. There was one comment received during that period, but no changes were made to the rules as a result of the comment. This particular rule package was brought before the commission on April 4th of this year and adopted. And since this package was strict bill implementation with no change from the original bill language, the whole advisory committee was not convened in keeping with our normal processes to discuss publication and then bring it back again for a second meeting for a recommendation from you for adoption to the commission. It was just strict bill implementation. If you look at the rule, it's pretty much exactly verbatim what's in the actual bill, Senate Bill 916. However, the presiding member was advised of the process and approved of the proposed rule. So the rule package as published went into effect just a couple of days ago on May 1st. And that's all I have on this presentation.
Does anybody have any questions at this time? I do like to make one point that I know one of the concerns was, I know from now with the PBS and with the map, I believe PTAD has decided they'll show who the chief appraiser and their start and end dates associated with those reports, because there are times where a chief appraiser could come over and not really been there due to the PBS failings or the map failings. So I think that was one thing that PTAD is going to do on their end, but the link is pretty straightforward, showing who was there, and what the PBS and map indicate. But it seems like it was pretty straightforward. We appreciate TLR's, expedience on getting this bill implemented. And that was the one new change to Chapter 94 for us, that new rule. Correct, Mark?
For those who are interested, this is Mark Gladney again for the record. For those who are interested, it's, the rule number is 94.60. As the presiding member said, the link has been on our website for several months, and it seems to be working quite well.
Any questions? Okay, let's go to agenda item J, discussion appointment of work group members. So I'm going to call on Mark Gladney again.
Okay, once again, for the record, Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel for the PDP program. As we discussed earlier, we had discussed where ideas for rulemakings come from, and there was a number of different areas in which we do get ideas for work for rulemakings, and one of those ideas is from work groups. And one of the biggest functions of a work group will be that of in assisting in rulemakings and working with department staff to craft rule language. Now, we didn't have many bills this session that directly affected the PTP program. However, we will be addressing some changes in Rule Chapter 94, whether it comes from a previous rule review, this committee, or the general public, which ultimately could result in a rulemaking. If we do have situations like that that pop up, then that's where work groups become necessary to help the staff consider such changes and basically make the best set of rules that we can possibly make. So, should we get into a situation where there is going to be some rulemaking, staff will be setting up work group meetings, and you'll be notified as to the time and date as to when we are going to have work group meetings. Now, like the meeting we have today, the work group meetings will most likely be virtual. These groups will be less than a quorum, so we don't run afoul of the Open Meetings Act. But the discussions that we have in these work groups will not be shared with full committee unless it's properly noticed as an agenda item where specific updates may be given on progress. So we have 3 work groups for this committee, which the presiding officer has made appointments, as you can see on the screen. And I'm going to turn it over to the presiding officer to discuss the work group assignments.
Shane, you're muted.
Sorry about that. The enforcement group, again, the general responsibilities are to include criminal conviction guidelines, penalty matrix, other enforcement related matters and rules. The members right now are myself, Mr. Scott, and Gary Ernest. And the licensing work group, again, the duties include making recommendations regarding licensing requirements, inspections, and compliance and other administrative matters and rules. The current members that I've appointed at this point is Sydney and Mr. Radloff and Brian Ebersol. And then lastly, the education examination work group, the general responsibilities are to include making recommendations regarding education, examination, continuation requirements, and rules, and proposed Mr. Ernest, Mr. Radloff, and Mr. McDougall to be on that work group if needed. So at this point, does anybody have any concerns or questions about the pre-assigned work groups that that I've put in play?
No, I
Can
did
we
not.
be sent that information on an email with just a listing of who's on which group?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bell, I can get that to you.
Thank you.
And then I know that, our last meeting, 18, we did have a kind of a work group that we put together with regard to looking at our Chapter 90 rules to see if they're working and working well, if there are any changes. And at that time, there was Mr. McDougall, Mr. Vella, and Mr. Radloff. And I don't know if y'all have had a chance to maybe comment on that. I know looking from where I'm at, I think the rules have been working well, but I don't know what that work group has any comment with regard to that.
Yeah, I talked with Mr. Villa and Mr. McDougall or emailed them, and we all believe it's the same, and it's, the rule is working well. I know there's been some individuals have made, some comments to me about it, but I don't see anything that really needs to change. I think it's working well. It's very straightforward, and I think any registrant that would go through it and read it, they'd have a good understanding of that rule.
Right. And I guess with these work groups, if there's a need, we'll convene at that time, and they can work within their group, and then they would report to the advisory group at that time. So.
Yes, Presiding Officer Doherty, Mary Winston, yes, staff will reach out and we'll have a virtual meeting like this, phone call, whatever, and as needed, if there's an education and examination need to discuss or enforcement ethics and so forth.
Great. We appreciate everything y'all are doing for us and your time. And I know you guys do a great job and supporting us and keeping us going down the right path. So at this time, we'll go to, no other questions. We'll go to the recommendations, agenda item K, recommendations for agenda items for the next meeting. I don't know if anybody has anything that they think we may need to put on the next agenda. If you do so at this time, feel free to let us know. No suggestions at this time? Okay.
No, none right now.
Okay, let's go to I, discussion date and time of a location for next committee. I'm not sure we have to set a date today. I think, obviously I don't want to just call a meeting. When there's a need for a meeting, we'll call it. And, I don't know if if everybody agrees with that position at this time. If we're good with not really setting a meeting time or date at this time, I don't think it's needed. Are we good with that? All right.
Yes,
Yes, I agree. Yes.
yes, I agree.
All right, good. And I guess we'll go to M, adjournment. And before so, I do want to thank everybody for your time and your participation. And Angelica and Mark, I know you guys have been great working with us and getting the agenda together and some questions going back. Your staff has been excellent. Mr. Stenard, I appreciate everything you've done too, with the examination groups and everybody, Mr. Ron. And I just want to thank you all for, making things work and work well within our industry. So, and the members themselves, the advisory man, taking your time to participate in this advisory committee. I think it's been great. So that said, I'm going to adjourn. If anybody's got any other questions, feel free to speak. If not, we'll adjourn.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
y'all.
Have a
Appreciate it.
fantastic week.